Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the best and one of the worst performances of Mendelssohn's Violin Concerto, that acme of romantic violin concertos. And this is another one of those talks that's been a long time coming, and the reason is really simple. Every violinist in the universe has recorded the piece, some more than once, and most of them are very good. You know, the problem with the Mendelssohn Concerto is that it's so well written. I mean, it's Mendelssohn. It almost plays itself. That doesn't mean it isn't difficult or that you can't screw it up. I mean, you can, but it's very rare. One of those rare screw-ups is Isabelle Faust with the Freiburg Baroque Orchestra. Oh my God, it's ghastly. And it's ghastly for all the reasons you would think, because it's a period instrument performance of a work that has nothing to do with period instruments. I mean, nothing. Zero. Mendelssohn was not a Baroque composer. There's a news flash. The Freiburg Baroque Orchestra sounds just grotesque playing that music. And Isabelle Faust, a wonderful, thoughtful violinist, full of talent, has completely thrown her life away trying to adopt a period instrument, hideous sonority and mannered approach to phrasing. It's just an abomination. So do avoid that performance at all costs. I really recommend that you run away screaming if you see it coming in your direction. And of course, there are horrifying modern violinists who will, distort the piece beyond recognition. I mean, yeah, there's always that. You can never rule out perversity. But I do think basically most performances try to do the piece justice, and it's just a fabulous piece of music with amazing tunes and phenomenal interrelationship between the violin and the orchestral part. And so it works. It just does its thing, and that's what these violinists do. So I've really had to limit myself again to 12 recordings. And I didn't want this to be a parade of the usual suspects. I mean, you could have them if you like them, if you like Schering, if you like Grumio, if you like Oistrakh, if you like, we just make the list. You've got the list. You know the list. Go with it. You're going to be fine. There's just millions of these people, and they've all done decent versions of the Mendelssohn. Now, I do have a few of the old school in there because you have to, because they're sort of iconic performances, and so I include them. Of course I include them. But I also wanted to put in a lot of performances, or several performances, by young people and maybe slightly off the beaten path people, just a little. And I also wanted to emphasize interestingness in conductors, who I think really, really do the accompaniments justice because they're beautiful and fabulously orchestrated. So here is my list of 12. And, don't give me any guff if I don't mention one of your faves. Again, I want to hear this, oh, what about, comment like the question mark. Well, that's getting deleted. What about it? Who cares? Or you forgot to mention, No, I didn't forget anything. It's a positive thing. I did mention these. So here we go. You ready? Heifetz. You got to do Heifetz, right? It's Heifetz and Munch, of course. Now, some people don't like this because it's so fast. I think it's amazing because they all stay together. And it is absolutely stunning. It's an iconic performance by one of the greatest violinists of all time, so I must mention Heifetz. That is where the talk must begin. It really does. And it's absolutely stunning. And I so strongly disagree with people who find Heifetz to be cold because he was technically accurate. People who believe that technical accuracy precludes expression know nothing about expression. Period. So suck that up and get it into your brain. There is nothing that precludes having both. That is, technical, phenomenal virtuosity and accuracy, and superbly accurate and deeply moving expression. They go together. And Heifetz had it. Thank you. Next. Oh, I love this performance too. This is Josef Suk with the Czech Philharmonic and Karl Ancherl. This actually is some combination. You get the Mendelssohn, you get Bruch, and you get Berg all on one disc. And this is in also the Ancherl Gold edition, slightly repackaged, like a paper sleeve. These are stupendous performances. Suk was a very, very great violinist. The only reason he didn't have a bigger career is that he was stuck in communist Czechoslovakia, and, they would only let him out on certain occasions. He made that wonderful Beethoven concerto with Adrian Bolt that some of you mentioned when we talked about the Beethoven concerto, but this is an essential violin record anyway, and you get a beautiful performance of the Mendelssohn, and you've got Ancherl, who's just an amazing conductor of the Czech Philharmonic, which sounds fabulous, and what's not to love? So this, I think, is really a disc worth having and worth thinking about, and I'm so happy we got to the Mendelssohn so that I could talk about it. It may pop up again in future times. Let's put it that way. I don't think I brought this up when we did the Berg concerto, which it could very easily have been on that list too. So here we are. Josef Suk is absolutely terrific. Third, oh yeah, Leonid Kogan. Now, so many of you jumped up and down and slapped me around and brutalized me because I talked about Oistrakh, but not about Kogan. So I made it a point of not talking about Oistrakh and including Kogan. And that's the only reason. Kogan, of course, was stunning, a fabulous violinist. And this one is the stereo recording with the Paris Conservatory Orchestra under Konstantin Silvestri. Again, I'm trying to find interesting combinations and not just, hotshot violinists doing their thing. And this is definitely an interesting combination. No two ways about it. It's coupled with the Brahms Concerto, which is in mono with the Paris Conservatory Orchestra under Charles Bruch, which is also wonderful to have. But the Mendelssohn is gorgeous, and Silvestri is wonderful, and the Paris Conservatoire is fun, and Kogan is his usual amazing self. One of the things that's just delicious about the Mendelssohn Concerto is that although it's a romantic concerto in the sense that it's not in classical concerto form, classical concerto form is you have a big long orchestral introduction where the soloist sits there like this going, and then finally they come in, and then the orchestra and the soloist sort of work out the terms of their arrangement. The first movement is a negotiation, and after that, it's all normal. The soloist plays, the orchestra plays, and they go back and forth. And well, no, Mendelssohn was formerly quite adventurous, and he threw out that concept and devised a new type of concerto. And all of his concertos do that, which is one where the solo comes in immediately from the very beginning, and the orchestra provides the frame in which the solo operates. It's the landscape, the atmosphere, which doesn't mean, of course, that the orchestra doesn't have its own, fund of things that it does. It does. But the solo is front and center from the very beginning. But there are many, many moments in this concerto where the orchestra takes center stage. The most famous bit is the second subject, where the violin is whizzing along and just lands on a bottom G string or one of those strings where it just holds this low note, like that. And the second subject, ya da 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 dum ba da ya da da da, that's played by the woodwinds, accompanied by the violin. And so the orchestra matters, and the way that the orchestra plays matters. So the conductor matters. So this is fun, because you've got Silvestri, who's an amazing conductor, the Paris Conservatoire, which is a fascinating orchestra, like, the Czech Philharmonic was over here, and you've got an amazing violinist. And that's what you want in the Mendelssohn. You want all three, ideally. Next, this one's fun. This one's really interesting. I was listening to billions of Mendelssohns, and I came across this one that I hadn't heard in years. And I put it on, and I said, this is really nice. Pinchas Zukerman and Leonard Bernstein. Zukerman's name has just dropped off of the map of great 20th century violinists, but for a while he was really one of them. He made some fabulous records. He went into conducting more than violin playing. And, he gave that fabulous fanfare interview about how horrible period instruments were, which may have not helped his career, his name recognition subsequently. It was a very scatological review where he screamed at these people and said, I can make every ugly sound they can make on a normal violin. It was wonderful, but he didn't quite say it that way. Anyway, Zukerman was one of the great Stern, Zukerman, Perlman, La Kosher Nostra, as they were called in the day, of Israeli / Jewish / violin crew. He made many, many wonderful chamber music recordings, and he's just a terrific violinist. And it was wonderful coming across this again. It's a very, very fine performance. You've got Bernstein, who was a sensational Mendelssohn conductor. Make no mistake, he's done some of the best Mendelssohn out there, largely because he gives Mendelssohn some of the passion and muscle that so many of the more dainty Mendelssohnites deny him. And the music can certainly take it. And boy, this can take it. I mean, the opening movement is Allegro appassionato. I mean, it should throb with passion, and here it does. It's not tasteless, it's not slovenly, but it's very, very, very expressive and intense, and it's just beautiful. So this is worth considering. I mean, if you're collecting Bernstein and you see this popping up somewhere, it's a wonderful thing to have. It really is. It was fun, just really good, and it's nice to be able to talk about Zukerman, because nobody does. The poor man, he really deserves more recognition than that. So there you go. Next, Maxim Vengerov. This Vengerov box is just phenomenal. It really is. This is the Warner Vengerov box. There is absolutely nothing in it that isn't first rate. I mean, he's just a terrific violinist. Let me just see what if I have a track list. I can tell you who's doing this. I have no idea. Oh, Mozart, Beethoven, Mendelssohn. Nope, those are sonatas. Let me see if I can find a concerto in here. Violin concertos. Here they are. Of course. It's the Gewandhaus in Mazur. I knew that, but I just wanted to make sure I was right, because if I guessed, I know I would have gotten it wrong, and then all of you would have yelled at me. And I don't like to be yelled at. I'm sensitive. I'm a sensitive soul. And so is Vengerov. He's a wonderful violinist. I mean, he can play with this big, beefy sound. He's the Russian school, like Kogan and Oistrakh. It's a very, very rich, bold, romantic sonority. But he's a very, very sensitive artist as well. And he's got Mazur and the Gewandhaus, who are Mendelssohn's hometown team, sort of, kind of. I mean, a few hundred years down the road. And it's absolutely splendid. So if you've got Vengerov, you're in good shape. And after Vengerov, well, friends, here's another one that I'm doing because of you, because of all of you, when you all yelled at me and said, you left out Christian Ferras. Well, here he is again. It's on this Warner box of Christian Ferras jewels. And this particular jewel is Konstantin Silvestri, only this time with the Philharmonia. I mean, that's who I think is doing it. Let me make sure I got that right. I checked all this stuff before doing this little chat. But, the memory, yep, I'm right. Yay! The Philharmonia Orchestra under Konstantin Silvestri, who seemed to make a living conducting the Mendelssohn Concerto. So that's wonderful. And Ferras was, of course, a phenomenally great violinist. And it's wonderful to have that back, and I'm happy to mention him on your recommendation, because you're right. He's terrific. He deserves the acclaim. And so Christian Ferras on Warner is a great Mendelssohn concerto as well, and Silvestri is Silvestri. It's fun, actually, to have both Kogan and Ferras and compare the accompaniments, as well as the violin, because they're very different violinists, Ferras and Kogan. I mean, so that's also, that's a really nice sort of pairing to have, to be able to play one off against the other and see how they stack up. And after that, let's jump into the 21st century with Hilary Hahn. Everything in this box is going to show up, basically. She's part of the new parade of violinists. She's just an amazing artist. She really is. And her couplings have been fun. They really have. I've enjoyed them enormously as these things came out. Here you've got the Mendelssohn and the Shostakovich violin concertos, the Shostakovich first. Now, I saw her do the Shostakovich first concerto at Carnegie Hall. I mean, she's this very, thin, slender slip of a girl. She was then. She was quite young. This was a couple decades ago. And she just played the living daylights out of the piece. She's absolutely amazing. Phenomenal talent. And she, the Mendelssohn was seemingly made for her. And you would be mistaken, however, if you think that she's going to play it like a little elfin sprite or nymph or something like that. There's nothing nymphalicious about her playing. She just digs into it and plays it like it's phenomenal. It's just phenomenal. But, she coupled the Beethoven with Bernstein Serenade and the Barber and Edgar Meyer violin concertos and the Brahms with the Stravinsky. I loved these discs. I usually don't go for concept pieces where you take some horrifying modern thing and pair it with some chestnut, because it's the chestnut that's going to sell the horrifying modern thing. But this is not what she did at all. She took different masterpieces and paired them, and that's a whole different story, Just wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. So, yeah, terrific. Hilary Hahn is terrific. Then, this is worth considering also. I really enjoyed this. This is the Big Bis box. The Big Bis box of Bartholdy. There we go. The Big Bis box of Bartholdy. It's Mendelssohn. All of the symphonies, the string symphonies, all of the concertos, they're all here in this box. This is a great box. It really is. It's worth having just for what it is. And in the interior, and buried in here, you get all of the concertos, and the violin concertos played by Isabelle van Keulen, who is a sensational violinist. I remember her very first disc. It was on Philips. She was like 6. It was like a Haydn violin concerto and a Mozart or something like that. It was really remarkable. I mean, she just hurled herself at the music, and she still does. She hurls. No, I don't mean it that way. I mean, she really digs into the music wonderfully. And you've got the Amsterdam Sinfonietta under Lev Marquez, who also does the string symphonies, and this is really the best set of string symphonies out there as well. He's a very, very good conductor. It's a chamber approach because it's a chamber orchestra, which works perfectly well. It's not a huge orchestra that Mendelssohn uses. It's just double winds, a couple horns, trumpets and timpani. And you can do it with reduced forces very successfully as long as they don't sound like they're dying of anemia, like the Freiburg Baroque Orchestra, for example. Anyway, so Van Keulen is wonderful. And if you have this big box of Mendelssohn stuff, and I know that some of you do, then you've got an excellent version of the violin concerto. And you've got all the other ones, too. I mean, there are other violin concertos by Mendelssohn. Don't forget. And we'll be talking about that. Yes, momentarily. Hang in there, because there are. And they're lovely works. They're absolutely lovely works. So, oh, yeah. Nathan Milstein. We got to do Nathan Milstein because you got to do Nathan Milstein. I mean, there's no other reason. This we talked about as well with the Tchaikovsky. This was his last remake with Claudio Abbado and the Vienna Philharmonic. What could be bad? I mean, Abbado, for all of his ups and downs, was a very, very considerate accompanist. The Vienna Philharmonic is the Vienna Philharmonic, and Milstein is stunning. There was a guy, remember we did that talk on, artists who knew when to quit. And Milstein was a very smartly gauged artist in the way he handled his career. He never lost his technique. He kept it up till the very end, and then he stopped. He was really, really smart that way. And so this is a Mendelssohn that has what you might call the wisdom of old age, the benefit of experience, but all of the technique and all of the musicality that he had acquired along the way, in addition to his innate gifts and a wonderful accompaniment. And it's really just a classic pairing of the Tchaikovsky and Mendelssohn violin concertos. I mean, it belongs in every possible collection in the history of mankind, of course. So there you go, Milstein. absolutely delicious. Now, this is an interesting one. It's of a type that I'm not usually too sympathetic to, but the performance is marvelous. This is Daniel Hope with the Chamber Orchestra of Europe, and who's the conductor? Thomas Hengelbrock. You know, Hengelbrock, the period instrument guy, who really has done wonderful recordings of Haydn particularly, and all kinds of other even earlier stuff, Bieber and God knows what else. Hengelbrock is a good conductor. He really is. And Hope has adopted the original version. Oh, I know. Kill me now. The original version of the Violin Concerto. Now, Mendelssohn was an inveterate reviser. He only published things very, very reluctantly. And the Violin Concerto was written for Ferdinand David, who was the concertmaster of the Gewandhaus Orchestra at the time. And it was polished to a fare thee well before it was finally published. The original version contains, it doesn't really differ much in the orchestral part. It differs mostly in the violin writing. There's different figuration and things like that. And I usually hate it when people go back to these original versions, because if the composer changes something and then publishes it, that's what he did. Now, there are always exceptions. You know that there are exceptions. There are exceptions in the case of, some of Bruckner's second editions where there are three or more, or other people got involved, or, you deal with it on a case-by-case basis. I do not find the differences between versions here to be significant. I mean, really meaningfully significant. And Daniel Hope is a spectacular violinist who is somewhat underrepresented on disc. And this is just a magnificent performance. It is because you've got Hengelbrock as a conductor, a little more sharp-edged and periody than usual, but not to the point of being the Freiburg Baroque Orchestra or some sort of useless ensemble of grotescophiles. Not at all. It's a completely idiomatic, but at the same time vibrant and vivacious performance, superbly played in whatever version it's in. And so it's interesting, and it is a little bit different, but not so much as to be unrecognizable or irritating. It's really, really good. Just a wonderful performance. And, this is the world premiere recording of the original version. Yeah! Who cares, really? What matters is that it's a great performance of whatever it is. And because it's a great performance of whatever it is, he can get away with doing whatever he damn well pleases. It's absolutely terrific. So there's that one. Wait a minute, I've got to take this pile of Mendelssohn and put it over there while we get to the last two. Okay, second to last. Oh, this is so much fun. Viktoria Mullova. Now, I've been flogging her Universal recordings. There weren't many of them, but every single one of them was outstanding. Then she moved to Onyx, which I think is actually partly her label, and started doing things there. She's really a stupendous artist. She really is. And here you get two Mendelssohn Violin Concertos. You get the E minor, and you get the early D minor concerto for violin and strings, which is a lovely work that nobody ever plays. Nobody ever. Well, here it is. It's recorded. Seldom gets played. It's in the Bis box. Extremely well done by Isabelle van Keulen. And you've got this, Viktoria Mullova with the Academy of St. Martin in the Fields doing the regular Mendelssohn Concerto and the D minor Concerto. And this is a wonderful couple. You wonder why no one ever does it. They always do, Mendelssohn and Tchaikovsky, or Mendelssohn and Brahms, or Mendelssohn and something, But it's really great to have both Mendelssohn Violin Concertos on one disc. There's also a double concerto for violin and piano, by the way, which is quite lovely and nice to hear, too. These were all written when Mendelssohn was like 2. He was a prodigy of Mozartian ability. He really was. And so having these two things, to be able to hear an early work and then, the masterpiece, the big E minor Violin Concerto, well, that is quite something. And this is the best coupling of the two, probably. In a single thing, aside from getting a big box of things or whatever. But this is wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. Mullova plays, as I've said a million times, with a dark seriousness. Everything that she does, it sounds as though it matters, but it's not it's not pretentious. She's not heavy. She's not slow. It's not mannered. It's the tone. It's that beautiful, dusky, rich tone that she has. It's the ability of the violinist to personalize their sound. And she speaks with an indisputably individual voice through the violin. And these concertos have that. It's a wonderful, wonderful disc. I just adore this. I really do. When it came out, I was so excited. And like a lot of people, you may have been surprised to say, oh my, there's another Mendelssohn violin concerto that nobody knows, that never got played, that doesn't get recorded. Good for her for doing this, for being a big name soloist who is able to do a little bit of unusual repertoire and make the case for it, because it doesn't happen often enough. It really doesn't. Most big name soloists won't take the risk, or they can't get anybody to do it with them. So yay, this was a happy incident. However, my recording of the Mendelssohn Concerto, this is going to get you, I guarantee you. Because it may not be what you expect, but I just think this is one of the great records of violin and orchestra ever to come across in the history of mankind in recent decades. Well, no, it really is. It's an amazing, amazing disc. And again, it's the repertoire that makes it extra valuable. Ta-da! Christian Tetzlaff, just an amazing violinist, of course, with the Frankfurt Radio Symphony Orchestra, and Paavo Järvi on Ondine. I think this is just one of those discs that is a revolution in violinism, violinosity, violinitude, whatever you want to call it. Why? Because not only do you get the standard Mendelssohn Concerto, but it is bracketed by Schumann, and not your average Schumann. You get the Schumann Violin Concerto, which nobody cares about, ever, and which really deserves more credit than it gets. I mean, it is, it's Schumann. It's not the most felicitous when it comes to orchestration, nor is it the most felicitous when it comes to violin virtuosity. What it is good music. It happens to be for violin and orchestra. I mean, it could have been for kazoo and orchestra, and it would probably be just as good. But, Schumann was not all that sensitive to, orchestral tone color, and he was opposed on principle to excesses of virtuosity for their own sake. And that spells death in a romantic concerto setting, normally. It really does. But for all that, the Schumann Violin Concerto is a wonderful piece. And some violinists have sworn by it, and it really doesn't get the attention it deserves for those reasons. It's rather like the Nielsen Concerto, which ends in a sweet, happy, unvirtuosic way. I mean, it's just the kiss of death. And you also get the Fantasy for Violin and Orchestra, which is wonderful. Opus 131, very late Schumann, which means the orchestration's even worse. But it's also wonderful music, and it's performed, it's all about the performance, isn't it? I mean, it's the job of the performers to sell the product. And boy, do they sell the product. And to have Schumann and Mendelssohn, I mean, they were friends. They knew each other. They're from the same period. They belonged together. Mendelssohn was a huge influence on Schumann. It's just amazing that you don't see this happening more often. It's shocking. It's like the Mendelssohn. It's like Mullova here with the early concerto in D minor. The album matters when the performance is outstanding, and when you have a work that so many people have done so well for so long and has so many outstanding performances, then it really starts to make a difference. How thoughtful the coupling is, and the program, the whole program. And this is a program. You put on the whole bloody disc and let it rock. You start with the Schumann Fantasy. It's like a 13-minute overture, and then you get the Mendelssohn Concerto, and then you get the Schumann Concerto. What a wonderful idea. And Tetzlaff is just a genius violinist who is wonderfully expressive, and I just love the German school that he comes from it's an elegant school of playing. I mean, it has more restrained vibrato than usual. It doesn't throb and heave the way, for example, some of the Russians do. Not that there's anything wrong with heaving and throbbing. There is nothing wrong with it, but that's the style. But the Germans are a little bit more restrained, believe it or not. And, it works wonderfully well in this music, especially Schumann, who needs a combination of musical imagination and fantasy coupled with a certain restraint in the tone, not in the expression. You have to express through phrasing and accent and dynamics, and there's all kinds of other things you can do. And Tetzlaff does them all. And then the Mendelssohn is just wonderful. It's by no means a throwaway performance. It's a brilliant, insightful performance, full of wonderful nuances and details that no other performance has. And it's splendidly recorded, and it's a magnificent disc, and it is my, however, choice. And it's not one of those old geezers cranking away at their fiddle. Not a bit. It's a newish. What's the date on this? I don't even know. 2011. Well, there you go. A pretty new, recent recording. It's one of those recordings that restores your faith in humanity, because it shows that the great classics are still out there and still valid and still able to be interpreted in new and fresh ways, which are not distorting and stupid and obnoxious, but also that there are wonderful couplings and wonderful programs that you can put together, and works that deserve to be played more frequently that aren't, and they're by great composers. I mean, there's just so much about this disc that makes me happy, and it will make you happy too. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks so much for joining me. Take care.